6 months into the lockdown, South Africa is now on level 1. It means larger gatherings, a shorter curfew, and a general reopening of the economy. So how are people feeling about the move? Let's take you to eNCA's Ronald Masinda, who is at the Grand Parade in Cape Town. Ronald, level 1, but still with the virus still in our communities and still spreading to a certain extent. Looking more like, the spread has sort of been, the rate at which it's been spreading has reduced somewhat, but precaution still necessary. What is this translating to in terms of what you are seeing in terms of reopening of areas and establishments in Cape Town?
Well, good morning to us. What I can tell you, though, that since we've been covering the story this morning, there's a different atmosphere and a hive of activity, which is really a far cry to us from the 27th of March when we entered that hard lockdown where the roads were totally empty. There were barely any people on the streets. And, of course, came the anxiety, people not knowing what the future held. And also during that day, we reported the first death which came out of Cape Town. When I spoke to Premier Alan Winde, I am joined once again by Premier Alan Winde to tell us more. Mr. Winde, thank you so much for your time. Now, of course, what is the general attitude now with people knowing that there is more movement? Should we worry about COVID-19, and what are the numbers telling us?
So first of all, I'm really excited now that we've moved to level 1. It really is about getting our economy back up and running. So it's called the relaxation of those levels, but we must not relax our attitude towards masking and social distancing, etc. We must learn from other parts of the world. They've got second waves. We need to make sure that we've got a really great summer season, because then we'll be able to get our jobs back that we've lost, but we have to do it safely. So it's about finding that correct balance. But it is, I agree with you, there's a different feeling in the air. People are more excited, which is great. But we've got to do it safely. That's the bottom line.
You did mention earlier, just before the interview, that there were quite a number of cases that your department has been told. Just tell us more. Should we be concerned about those numbers?
So, of course, the most important thing is we used lockdown to get our health response ready. Then post getting the health response ready, it's about managing the spread of the virus. So, you monitor it. So we've got wall-to-wall, what we call hotspot management. So every district has got a team that monitors those districts and then sub-districts within the city of Cape Town. And what we want is we want to continually monitor that we're slowing the curve and it's coming down. And that's exactly what is happening. The numbers are coming down every single day. But you've also got to watch to see if there's any resurgence in infections. So at the moment, that wall-to-wall is showing us that it might have been a wedding in Stanford, and you'll find maybe 9 extra infections. But that's 9 positive instead of going 9 less. We found at funerals in Beaufort West now, we're seeing some of the numbers. They're all small numbers at the moment, but it doesn't matter. We've got to be monitoring. And then the message is, and the same thing in Lutzville on the West Coast. We've seen little areas where it's a couple of cases, 9 here, 20 there. But we need to make sure that every time they're reducing. And so my message is to, across the province, we've got to make sure that we understand that if we gather with a whole lot of people, there is a risk. And so make sure that wherever that gathering happens, whether it's in a social gathering, whether it's in a church gathering, whether it's in a business environment, like now on the parade, if you're coming here to visit some of these stallholders, or in a group which you've just seen now taken by a tour guide, make sure that you're following the regulations. Keep your masks on, monitor, make sure you're washing your hands, make sure you've got that social distancing, because then we will manage any possibility of that second wave. So it is really critical that we get those two right.
Premier, you've set aside the next 100 days to be very crucial in job creation. What promises are there for people who are unemployed? Because earlier on, we stood outside a queue there in the CCMA where many people are just worried about what the future holds for them.
Correct. So I think we learned a lot during COVID-19. We learned a lot in government of how to manage, of how to understand risk, and really keep that curve flat. I mean, and we did some amazing things. We built hospitals in weeks. We came up with innovations on red dot taxi systems to get our nurses to the work and home safely on an app. We delivered medicines to people's homes now. 600,000 people now have received parcels of medicine. So we learned how to do things innovatively. Now we've got the next challenge, and that is clawing back, it's the recovery stage. So we've set ourselves 3 areas for recovery. It's safety, it is dignity, and then jobs. And of course, I think both of safety and dignity underpin jobs. We've got to claw back the jobs that we've lost. So in these 100 days, it's how do we get projects that are looking at maintenance in government space to perhaps clean buildings or paint them, or we've got to make sure that there's those projects that help us, that we're ongoing with our water catchment areas. We've got to get those kind of jobs back that government fund. And at the same time, we've also got to help the private sector remove red tape, allow them to also quickly get their businesses up and running again. It is tough, but we've got to work together to get this going, so we claw back those jobs, because those people that have lost their jobs have now lost dignity. They can't feed their families, they can't pay for electricity. So it doesn't make any sense that we hold them back. We've got to try and support them and actually get the economy to get those jobs back, because that's how you get dignity back, but that's also how we as a region are going to get back on track. And so really it is a big focus. Remove the barriers and support where we can, and get private sector to join us, and let's actually get back to better than when we started.
Premier, thank you so much for your time. And the message there, loud and clear to us, and that is to try and get the economy back on track. Of course, the Western Cape has had a long, difficult road during the hard lockdown or the lockdown, given that at one stage the Western Cape was the epicenter of COVID-19 with the highest infection rate and also the amount of deaths. But it seems to have slowed down the spread. But now the immediate focus is to get people to go back to work. There's around 160,000 jobs that have been lost during this time. And the most important thing now is to make sure that those who have lost jobs can get jobs. And hopefully, as Alan Windy mentioned, the tourism is also one part that the Western Cape government is trying to accelerate in order for people to get jobs. In tourism and hospitality alone, around 80,000 jobs have been lost, which is really devastating for the economy here in the Western Cape.
Yeah, absolutely. That's eNCA's Ronald Masinda there at the Grand Parade in Cape Town, emphasizing that the point about reopening and restarting the economy's engines, but also doing so safely and cautiously as we do and move to level 1.